Hello, podcast listener. This is your host with the most, JJ, welcoming you to this episode of JJ Meets World. Our guest today is Mr. Chase Miller. We're going to talk about being in the sports world and doing play-by-play and his favorite sports movies. Plus, we're going to touch on the fact that Chase himself has actually been a part of marching bands. And Tucker and I break down our hatred of fees. But first, a quick word from our sponsor. This episode of JJ Meets World is brought to you by Natalie Deutsch of Hatch Realty. Natalie has a proven track record to get your home sold faster and for more money. She is consistently focused on her clients' needs and wants throughout the entire process and make sure that they are well taken care of. If you're looking to buy or sell, reach out to Natalie today. On average, Natalie sells a home every 3.74 days. That's at least 2 a week. And last year, Natalie earned her clients on average over $4,000 above list price on their homes. And you don't have to take our word for it. Here's some of the great reviews Natalie has received. I was overwhelmingly impressed with Natalie and all the Hatch team. She was very responsive and responded to all of the emails within an hour. She gave great advice and encouragement from the listing and pictures, the offer, and all the closing details. The marketing team knew exactly how to promote my property, and I was pleased by how soon and easily my property received an offer. I was actually dreading selling my condo, and Natalie did such an awesome job that I felt like I really didn't need to do anything. The thing I most appreciated was that she really listened to what I wanted to do and respected my decisions. I would definitely recommend Natalie and all the Hatch Realty team. They made this process so wonderful. That was from Diane. So listen, if you're in the mood to buy or sell a home, give Natalie a call right now. You can reach her at 701-388-9338. Natalie, Natalie, at hatchrealtyfm.com, or you can go to livefargomorehead.com. That's livefargomorehead.com and find out some information. Huge thanks to Natalie Deutsch of Hatch Realty for sponsoring JJ Meets World.
1, 2, 3, 4. JJ Gordon, sort of like that Indiana Jones, in that he's always sniffing out his next adventure. Yes, he is. He's always interviewing guests so he can have them on his show and they can talk about pop culture, arts, and leisure. JJ has his flag unfurled and he likes his french fries curled, and he's fun and then he twirled as he goes to meet the world. He will march into the rain even if his ankle sprained. Take a peek inside his brain. This podcast is called JJ Meets World.
Fees. They drive me crazy. I recently just rented a U-Haul that advertised itself for $19.95 a day. You can rent this van and you can remove anything you want. And then if you look at the ad, it's really, really small. It's like plus mileage and fees.
Yeah.
So this $19.95 ended up being $52.50. To me, they're lying.
Yeah.
Like it's false advertising.
I ran into that same thing about a couple weeks ago. I had to move some stuff out of my mom's garage, and I thought, you know what? I don't want to bother anyone else to help me with this. I'm not going to borrow someone's truck. I'm just going to go rent like a van for like $20 or something. Yeah. And it ended up being $80 at the end of the day.
Which is ridiculous. Yeah. And I understand if just tell me that, right? Be like $40, you get up to 100 miles. Right. And then I go, okay, I can wrap my brain around that. But
when yes on the price I'll be paying you, not on the price that you suckered me in on, and now I feel a pressure to pay all this other stuff because we're already this far along in the deal.
And when you rented, did they also give you the threats of like, and if you don't bring it back and it's not clean, if you don't do this? The thing that bothered me the most was he goes, it's got a full tank of gas in it, so you need to return it with a full tank or we'll charge you, to fill it up, which is just like returning a car at an airport where gas might be $2.35 a gallon, but they're like, not here. Gas is $9.72 a gallon.
For me, they said get it back to half a tank, which they do because they know you can't tell as you're filling it up, so you're going to go over probably.
So I drove this car exactly 17 miles. So my last stop on the way to U-Haul was a gas station 2 blocks away. I go in there and I like, okay, well, they said it was full. So I'll start, and it's true, the arrow was on the F, but I start filling up. It took 8 gallons of gas. So not only did I pay this huge fee to rent the van, I'm now paying an additional $17, $18. Mm-hmm. So, and given this company obviously knows what it's doing, it's all over the place. Right. But it drives me nuts when there are fees that they kind of have hidden,
Right.
which is ironic because I used to play a character on commercials who loved hidden fees.
No hidden fees on JJ Meets World, though.
No, none
You
whatsoever.
know exactly what you're getting.
Yep.
Because you don't pay shit.
Yeah, or double your money back if you if you don't enjoy this episode for the price you paid. One of the things I think about fees is it's a lie, right? It's a little white lie, and you're not giving me the full picture. It's like when somebody asks you, where have you been? You said, oh, I was out studying.
Right.
Well, you may have been out studying, but you were out studying with, your girlfriend and you were playing footsie under the table. And
Right.
Give me the whole picture when you want something like that. Could you imagine what it would be like if you went to a grocery store and you purchased a loaf of bread that was advertised as $1 for this loaf of bread? And they said, oh, sorry, there's the bread tax. And you're like, okay, a tax. There's also a bag fee, and there's this, and so all of a sudden now you're paying $1.95
Why not
for your
just
bread.
make the bread $2 and stop telling me about all that
Right.
stuff?
In fact, I would actually be happier paying you 5 more cents than it would be with all these fees,
Right.
just so I know the price I'm paying when I pick it up.
Right.
It helps me budget. I don't know how people budget if they live in a world where fees are tacked on. It's like banks. My big national bank that I'm with charges a monthly maintenance fee. And so I finally asked them about it. I'm like, what's the deal with this monthly maintenance fee? You're charging me $10.95 a month for it. And they said, oh, that's so that you can have write checks. And I said, I haven't written a check out of this account in 5 years. And they're like, yeah, but this gives you the opportunity that if you want to write a check. I said, well, I don't want it. Like, this
What
is
kind of maintenance do they
Right.
need to do?
And I said, well, I don't want it anymore. They're like, well, this is a checking account.
Right.
And I said, so
I'm getting a checking account that I then pay extra for so that it remains a checking account.
right.
Yeah.
No wonder banks around here advertise like America's best free checking where they don't charge you. Also, ATM fees. I don't get it. Who's actually paying the fee? They say you don't pay an ATM fee with this. Well, how is that ATM getting the money that you're agreeing to pay for?
I mean,
it?
Bell Bank is basically, which is my bank, they're basically just paying the fee. You'll get like a refund, but they'll just cover it for you if it's a non-Bell Bank thing. And I think all that is them going, listen, we look at the numbers and it's better to just comp our customers that fee that they're paying because it gives us a competitive advantage. So I'm guessing they just work it out on a spreadsheet and go, you know what, it just makes more sense in the long run to say, either there are no fees on our ATMs or if you get charged a fee, you're going to get reimbursed it on the back end.
What if you, Tucker Lucas, bought yourself an ATM machine?
If I, Tucker Lucas, bought myself an ATM machine, is that a thing I can do?
Yeah, you can. Yeah, the ATM machines are sponsored by either by banks, which own them and place them in places and get contracts, or independent people. It's just like a vending machine.
I see.
So if you've got a gumball machine, you could also own an ATM machine. So let's say you, Tucker, have an ATM machine.
I, Tucker, have an ATM machine.
You set it up in your house, and
It's
you're like,
in my house.
every day you're gonna take out $20,
and I'm charging myself a usage fee.
yeah, like $9.95, and
Just
now
use it
you're
as a savings
making
account?
money.
Am I?
You're making money.
Am I really? Is that how
You're
the math works?
Making money
every
out of
time.
it.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know how many transactions you would need to break even on the cost of an ATM machine,
Right.
or the initial like $10,000 in cash you'd have to.
And it's
probably
not
put in
just that. I
thing.
mean, there's upkeep. I mean, it's a machine. It's going to break down. It's connected to the internet. There's going to be hacking problems. I don't know if
I think you should probably charge yourself $10.99.
I would rather just own a gumball machine
because it's so much simpler.
because I know what's going on with it.
You would let your gum go
There's
so
no
stale.
fees beyond the quarter with a gumball machine.
Has anyone sued the owner of a gumball machine because it cracked their teeth? Because that gumball machine owner is like, screw it, I'm not going to, it's a giant ball filled with gumballs. I'm not going to refill it so they're fresh.
There must be a disclaimer on the front or something that by interacting with this machine, you release all liability to the owner of the gumball machine.
Our guest today
Ties into this somehow.
chews gum and charges fees. No, there's no fees associated with Chase Miller. I work with Chase, and I've wanted to have him on for a while because I think he's an interesting dude. He also looks like he's 11 years old.
I could see that.
Yeah, I mean, he looks like a young dude. I bet he gets carded nonstop.
Right.
He also is one of those guys who he doesn't curse a lot. He'll use words like frick. Be like, what the frick? And I always get a real kick out of it when he says it. And our conversation today covers what it's like to be a band leader and a trumpet player. It covers calling play-by-play what sport he doesn't care for out of all the sports out there, and then even the definition of what is the word sport. We have a pretty fun conversation with him today, and I think you're probably going to end up listening to this episode and then going back and Googling a couple of these marching band websites that he's been bringing up so that you can listen to the sweet, sweet sounds of a marching band playing your favorite hits by Katy Perry, all the way back to Frank Sinatra. So sit back, relax, and enjoy this episode of JJ Meets World.
JJ Meets World.
Welcome to the JJ Meets World studios, Chase Miller, who I get to work with on the weekdays at my real job, the one that pays the bills. But hey, patreon.com/JJ Meets World. Maybe we can change that one of these days. Chase, welcome to the studios.
Yeah, thank you very much. I like your logo, JJ Meets World over there. It looks very festive.
Doesn't it?
During this time of the year.
We also got this road case here that is for bands, but instead what I did is I have filled it with garbage. And then we have our little
just McDonald's wrappers in there.
Yeah, all it is. It's just a bunch of them. Chase, so I've gotten to know you through work, but we've had some good laughs over the years. So I want to start with this. What's it like being a part of a marching band?
Ooh, marching band is a lot of fun. You're instantly with like 165, 180 people that all have the same mindset, the same vision, because obviously you're not the show, even though you feel like you are the show, especially once halftime and pregame comes around. But it's fun. And the cool thing was I was a trumpet player, so I got to play all the harmony. So I got to squeal and riff. And, when we played a Queen Bohemian Rhapsody, I was the one trying to squeal as high as I possibly could. Then I got to be a marching band drum major. And a lot of folks hear drum major like, oh, what kind of drum did you play? Did you play the snare? Did you play the tenor? Did you play the bass? And
you have the big boom, boom,
yeah,
boom,
yeah, exactly.
Boom.
That's the bass.
That's
right,
the bass.
right there. So a drum major in a marching band is like a conductor. You're one of the three people that are sitting up top of an actual ladder and conducting, and that was really cool because now you're hearing 167 instruments just melting your face off essentially every Saturday morning before you get to the actual game or throughout the week. So I'll put it to you this way. It's insert your favorite movie with like 10 or 12 kids and like a Home Alone where they sleep in a little bit too late and they forget Kevin. It's kind of like that on a daily basis, especially with game day. It's like, where's everyone going? Okay, did you do the right move? Oh, you missed this move. Okay, but we can do this. So it's a lot going on at one time. But
so I want to know, you cover a lot of ground in a marching band.
You do.
So here's the thing. When I'm thinking about playing the trumpet, I'm thinking about like, well, I'm going to be winded after a couple of notes because I'm having to use breath control for that. But also we're asking you like, by the way, you need to get 6 city blocks while you're doing this. So what's it like as far as like an actual physical activity to be a part of a marching band?
Yeah, I think that's the one misconception for a lot of folks because we did a movie one where we had Star Wars, E.T., and a bunch of others, and there was no break. Like the only break that we had was like go, and it was 9 minutes. And the first time we did it from start to finish, everyone was like, you could just, it didn't matter if it was someone who's doing a marathon to someone who likes to have donuts and coffee every day for every lunch. It was one of those deals. So it is, it keeps you active more than you probably think because then you're standing the entire time during the game. We never sit down. You're doing a march over from the south side of campus all the way up to the Fargnome. Then you go play for the Tailgaters in Heaven There Is No Beer, Wipeout, the school song, all those type of stuff. And then you kind of get a half hour to sit down, take a break, eat an apple, which is very important in marching band. You always have to eat an apple. So we get the apple and you get a little bit of water. And then literally after the day is done, you just want to devour a large pizza by yourself and tell everyone to go, screw off because I am tired. And then you have a shower beer. Shower beer is very rewarding after a marching band day. I'll just be honest.
Do you have a collection of CDs or tracks on your phone of marching band covers of songs where you're like, I think they do it better than the original?
So have you heard of DCI? Drum Corps International. This is where I'm becoming a band geek now.
Please do.
Yeah. So Drum Corps International is like a bunch of high school kids, essentially, that's like traveling for AAU basketball or like, JO volleyball or anything of that nature. But they do this during the summer. And they go from California to Boston to Texas to Minnesota. And there was a couple times they went to Minnesota and we went to with a couple of our friends. And they played a Queen version of 12, 13 minutes. But this is like, you're hitting everything on the money. You're hearing the, crescendo coming up from the bottom all the way up to the very top. You're hearing every little detail, and it melts your face off, which is really cool as a band nerd the first time you see that. So it's one of those deals where you can kind of, like anything else, you can have a band that's just there just to have fun and just kind of riffing notes like a jazz band down in New Orleans, or you can have folks that are really into it to a high level that are competing, like, you're going for your AAU basketball tournament trying to get a scholarship
Did
somewhere.
marching bands ever do something, slow and sexy?
Yes. If you listen to SWAC marching bands, so Southern, for example, and
wow, I had no idea marching bands had so many subgenres.
Yes. The SWAC, it's a Southwest Athletic Conference, and it's typically historically black colleges. So like the Grambling States of the world, they call themselves the Human Jukebox, and you got the Southern Marching Band. So all those, and when they play, they squeal, and one time they played Beyonce, If I Was a Boy. Oh my God. I brought a tear to my eye. It was so good.
The movie Chef with Jon Favreau, where he buys a food truck, uses a marching band cover of Sexual Healing.
Ooh.
That is amazing, because I'm listening to it and you can't really, that's the thing about a marching band, like you can't really recognize it until all of a sudden it clicks, and then you're like, oh my God, this is Call Me Al. And you can hear everything from it after that. But it does take that click moment. I remember watching that movie, and they're driving down the road, and I'm like, I recognize this tune. What's it from? And I'm like, Sexual Healing. And I think that, that's the fun of a marching band. So, okay, here's what's the difference between a marching band and a pep band? Is it the same band? They're just doing different activities?
Yeah, pep band is more so like, okay, go to your basketball game or a hockey game, and there's like a 30-piece pep band, and you're just like, all right, let's play Everybody Needs Somebody to Love. Here we go, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you're just going. Where a marching band, you're actually physically putting on a performance, putting on a show. It's not just like a collection of misfits going, hey, let's play Hey Baby, here we go, or Peg or any type of music. So pep band's a lot more chill, where marching band is a lot more, okay, you're here to have fun, but you're also here to kind of work. And at the end of the day, typically at North Dakota State, when I was there, we would do Monday, Wednesday, Friday rehearsals for 2 hours on the field. And if we really needed to, we would have our own section nights 1 or 2 times if like the music was a little rough. Like we play with post-traumatic funk syndrome, and kind of had a halftime, it kind of felt like a halftime Super Bowl show, kind of playing some of their music. And we were on there, and they brought the trailer out. So that was a little bit more challenging of music than what we normally played. So then we had a little bit more time to prep. And then Saturday, it's like, if the game's at 2:30, you're up at 5 a.m. somewhere grabbing food, because everyone knows that might be the only time that you had food, and everyone can say, JJ, I saw that you had your double pancakes with strawberries and cinnamon, so I know you're good until 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the afternoon.
When you'll get your apple.
Yes, exactly. So you go and have breakfast. You go and have like a 2-hour pregame, like actual practice run through, essentially one more time. And then you might be able to go home, take a quick cat nap. Maybe it's homecoming and you're going to play at a pep fest somewhere, and then you're doing the parade, and then you're doing the march over, and then you're doing the game, and then you're like, where's my shower beer?
And then are you sometimes like, ugh, those players don't even realize how much work this is.
We had someone from an opposing team a couple years ago come up and say, man, your guys play with a lot of soul up there. And I was like, oh, that was the best compliment ever. Best compliment ever. So it was pretty good.
And so how did you pick the trumpet?
Trumpet picked me, JJ.
Oh, did it?
Yeah,
oh, there you
picked
go.
me. Yeah, no.
Were you driving your car and a voice spoke behind you?
Yes.
Like,
Play the trumpet.
It was like the calling in Sister Act. So when did you get your call? Oh, the call. No, it was one of those deals where you start figuring things out, and you're like, hey, the trumpet always gets the harmony. Trumpet always gets to play the really cool riffs and the little parts of it. So no disrespect, I don't want to be a trombone player or someone who's playing the tuba who's got all the bum, 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 bum. For them, it sounds the same, where you're playing the harmony if you get trumpet 1, trumpet 2, trumpet 3. So that was probably the main reason.
So as a chubbier guy, I always thought like, well, if I'm going to be in a band, I got to play the tuba,
Yes.
right? I mean, just
He saw too
Isn't
many
that the
movies.
law of bands that the chubby guy plays the tuba? Because you're not going to put like the 5'2", little tiny guy into a tuba. He can't carry it.
We had one of those though. A girl, Annalise. She was
Really?
like 5 foot nothing, and she was a You call them sousaphones when they're in marching band because that's like a walking tuba.
Okay.
So a sousaphone. So yeah, but I think you'd fit right in with that, JJ.
I had a roommate who played the trumpet, and
Played it well.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, he was a good player, but the practice, like having to listen to him just do scales and stuff like that, I thought to myself, oh my God, poor Louis Armstrong's mother, because this is it's going on forever and ever and ever. And I think people look at a trumpet and be like, oh, it's three buttons. I can do that. I'll just, I blow into this and I push this and boom, I got it. The trumpet is a very, it's a fickle mistress.
It really is, because you have a little sharp, you got a little flat, and I'm not talking about my Tuesday. You got your sharps, your flats, you got your scales from G to G, and then you got to get possibly a mute. So if you're playing, like, say, the stripper, for example, and you want to get that wah, 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 you got to get the mute in there to really sexify it up a bit.
And the mute is the part that looks like a plunger, right?
Correct. Yeah. I'm not plunging it out because you threw something down my horn. Thank you very much, JJ.
Did anyone like flick pennies? Like, because here's the thing.
God, we're down my horn.
If I'm playing the trumpet, I am constantly like tipping the trumpet up to the sky. Because that's my style.
Yeah,
of
every time
playing.
you play the trumpet.
That would be my style.
Air trumpet.
But the worry would be like, what happens if it's raining during that? What happens if people are throwing dots?
Well, and now during this time of year where it's nice and cold with the snow that we've been getting, we actually had to practice outside, and you had the metal mouthpieces.
Oh, yeah.
So guess what you do? You go grab a plastic mouthpiece, because otherwise you're literally going to be, I can't get the trumpet out of my that type of deal. So it's going to be kind of the Christmas story.
So I've heard that trumpet players, because it's a lot of lip work inside
Correct.
the mouthpiece,
Yeah.
so that they're better kissers.
Yes.
You ever
This
get
is-
complaints?
This is true, yes.
Is it?
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't play the French horn well, but I can French kiss pretty good. How about that? Yeah. No.
Oh man, that band line has been going along for years.
It's like, oh, thank God I'm dating a trumpeter. I was with this flautist forever.
No, it kind of
He would
honestly.
just blow over my mouth.
I can't even come back to that. When I was
Let me seduce you.
what I was trying to get at with those mouth exercises, I guess is one good way to call it. There is when you are playing the trumpet and you take like a year break and you come back to play it again. It's kind of like trying to train for a marathon. You just can't run 26.2 miles. Like, you're just not going to come back and play, Hey Baby, Peg, Tequila, We Like to Party and all those songs and be like, yeah, let's go again. It's like, we like to, I guess I'm done.
Did you ever bring your trumpet to like parties and be like, hopefully someone will axe me to take out my axe?
No, that's not as sexy as a guitar. Like, I had a friend who could play guitar.
But no one asks someone to bring out their guitar at a party.
No.
A guitar appears.
This is true. This is true.
Just suddenly like, I didn't know we had one of those here.
Oh, damn it. That's the moment where it's like, maybe we should go.
The guitar, though, we did have a buddy of mine in the dorms who we would go and hang out with a bunch of friends, and all of a sudden, the guitar magically appeared, but a trumpet never magically appeared for some reason. I don't know why.
So the guy I roomed with also played guitar.
Yes, he
and
did.
He loved John Mayer, so he played a lot of John Mayer guitars.
Did he get a lot of women?
No. And that's the problem, because someone would be like, there'd be a lull because somebody couldn't find the right adapter to plug in their phone to a speaker, and he'd be like, oh yeah, and he'd run out to his car and grab his guitar and come in and be like, John Mayer. And everyone would be like, could you keep it down? We're trying to listen to the microwave for the ding. And but that was
speakers aren't working.
Let me get my guitar real quick. I mean, any kind of thing. Like, if there's a lull in the conversation. I don't know if he was always hoping that at one point, so it was like, the person who we paid to come to the wedding to play our serenade didn't show up. If only someone knew some smooth sounds that come from a early 2000s pop star.
I once crashed on your couch after a night of heavy drinking, and his roommate played the same two chords all night long. I didn't sleep. I just laid on because he was up for some reason.
And this isn't Lionel Richie all night long, I'm guessing, right?
No.
We're not going all night long.
No. Not at all.
Okay, so we got banned out of this.
Yes.
Let's talk about this. So obviously, sports big part of your life.
Mm-hmm.
You've been in sports broadcasting now for how many years?
A decade.
Decade.
Yeah, I started when I was 19 as a part timer,
That's
and
pretty
I had
amazing.
one button to push. So I've really moved up in the world.
Yeah.
Because it was like
How many buttons now?
More than one, two. No, it was one of those deals where you came in, you ran the NFL games on radio, and it was literally push this button up, you press on, push this button down, press off, and play the commercials. So I figured if I could do that, that I could move up in the world.
And when did you start doing play-by-play?
Play-by-play probably 7-8 years ago, roughly. Yeah.
So talk to me a little bit about what it's like doing play-by-play, because you're going out to small towns in some cases, and some of these are rivalries where there's, 2,000 people attending a game. What is it like doing play-by-play for something like that?
It's kind of like being in the marching band where you got a bunch of instruments, right? So you have your Nat sound mic, as we like to call it in the business, which is the good job, Johnny. You did a really good job. You're hearing that for the ambiance, so to speak, for the listeners
Is
at
that
home.
short for natural sound?
Yes, correct. Nat sound. Thank you very much, JJ. You go 1 for 1 on the radio. Pop quiz today.
You're calling the podcast right now.
And
Gordon
then-
is 1 for 1 on podcast references here. We'll see what he can do after this. He's had a hard time this season.
We're going to take this media timeout brought to you by JJ Meets World. We're back after this. You're doing these little things, and, it kind of depends on your instruments. And obviously, you want to, what I always had a difficulty with when I first started is I wanted to make everything sound larger than life, right? So Nellie goes down the lane and she throws it up. Oh, it's no good.
It's kind of the Howard Stern thing.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, well, not everything sounds sexy in a 40-2 ball game. At that point, you just kind of have to tell the story and just kind of say it like it is. So the older you get, just like anything else, you should hopefully get better at it. And then you just kind of start figuring out your voice inflections. You start figuring out, okay, when can I really, push one in, so to speak, of, is this a moment where you can really go up to a different octane, a different level? Is, hey, Hanson goes coast to coast for the win, score, boom, and really get it to where Hanson goes coast to coast for the win, score, boom, so it's different. And everyone has and the other thing too, everyone does it differently. It's kind of like if you listen to 500 broadcasters, you might hear similar cadences and you might hear similar ways of inflection, but they are going to describe the game differently than how I would describe the game, which makes it pretty cool.
Yeah, I used to, a couple of times I had a chance to be in the room when my uncle, previous guest, Uncle Baseball, Paul McDonald, on the show, he would call just like Fargo Bombers games, just as like a side gig or whatever. And just the amount of knowledge he had locked in his head and what he was able to just bring out from nothing, from play-by-play, it floored me. I've always been in awe of people who can call athletic games live. To me, it seems like such a massive amount of information is going through your head at that point. You know player names. You're describing a complex visual scene to people who are only listening to it, probably only listening to it. Although there are probably some people in the audience watching and listening on a thing as well.
We love those people. They're a P1 audience.
Yeah. Those are the ones who are really invested.
So tell me if this thought process is right. So just because you are an amazing announcer at basketball doesn't mean you're going to be a great announcer at baseball.
No.
Or, each sport has their own thing. So when I listen to a baseball game, there's a lot of downtime in baseball where they can recap parts of previous games or how this player's been doing for the season, a little bit of history. In basketball, it's so constant that it's, 61 passes to 62, couple dribbles, shot from the key, it's good, 2 points for Montana, and you're constantly moving something like that. Football, another thing too, where you've got these little pockets
Right.
of, okay, now I'm actually describing what it is, but then I'm filling in between there. Is there a sport that you've called that takes all of those skills? Like, is, girls' high school volleyball the antithesis?
The one thing I would say is hockey is probably one of the tougher ones because they're doing line changes. So you could have a person on the ice and 40 seconds later you have a whole new five. And then another 40 seconds later, you have a whole new 5. So hockey, you definitely have to know your research, your X's and O's a little bit, but also the numbers. You're not going to be looking down at a sheet quick going, who's 15? Because by the time you do that, they could already have a goal scored or someone could have a little different. Baseball is definitely storytelling. And baseball is one where you want someone who's been with the team for the entire year or they have previous knowledge of the players because now you're storytelling. Baseball is the one where you can kind of say, hey, you know what? Max Johnson's coming up to the plate. He's 2 for 3 today with the home run and a double back in the 5th inning with the home run and the bases clearing double in the 3rd. Max Johnson, such and such and such and such and such and such. Now you
loves
can
macaroni and cheese. Just yesterday, I saw him take down a whole plate.
And that's where you can get more into it. Where if you're doing volleyball, it's bump set spike goes back row dig. Now Johnson with the set. Oh, it goes to the outside hitter. Miller with the kill. Even that you're constantly going like basketball a little bit. So, and it's also different if you're calling a game by yourself, if you're calling a game with a number 2 or a color commentator, or possibly you have a sideline reporter as well, because now you have 2 voices, 3 voices potentially, and how well do you work off another? Because you can tell, like anything else, if you listen to a game, you can tell if they genuinely like each other, or is this something where, hey, JJ, I put you together with such and such, and you're going to go out and do a game, and you don't like such and such. And it's going to come off a little bit different compared to someone who's like, you've done it for 5-10 years, you know each other's background, you know when I can shut up, when you can go, and vice versa. So it's definitely little things I think more as folks in the radio listen to than just folks who are just, hey, I wonder if my granddaughter's game is on the radio. Can I tune in? I don't think they care as much, but you can tell.
One of the things in theater that you do is when you do a show like in a small town, not every kid's going to be the lead, but at one point in every show, every kid needs to stand center stage in the spotlight. So when you're blocking a show, because they need to have that moment where grandma and grandpa can take a picture, stuff like that. When you're calling a game in a small town, do you try and make sure that you mention by name every player who's at least on the playing field or the court at one point to kind of give the kicks a little bit?
Well, the one thing is if it's let's say 70-20 girls basketball game when there's 5 minutes left to play, well, yeah, probably for a lot of people out there, they might have tuned out already or the game's already over. But for the girls that are coming in or for the teams that are coming in, it's called, kind of garbage time. But for them, it's the only time that they're playing varsity sports. And all of a sudden, their family member, their friend can say, hey, I heard you on the radio. I heard Miss Anderson, on the radio. I heard, Jenny Anderson for 2. That was pretty cool. So you still have to make it, you still have to make it one of those memorable moments, but not everything is going to be memorable. But to your point, you still want to come out and deliver a broadcast, because if you come on and say, well, it's 70-20, Anderson left wing makes a 3, now it's 73-20. I mean, it's going to sound pretty boring, so you kind of give it a little bit more pep.
One of our first guest on this show, Noel Scotch Anderson, who we also work with, I wrote a sketch when he and I were on a morning show together about 2 baseball announcers who loved to throw out cliches and idioms. Like that was their favorite part of the game. And so Scotch edited this piece together, and it was perfect because he found the perfect like tone that was in the background to make you think that you're in a ballpark, and the perfect amount of reverb. And I remember we had one line where I could not get through it, and finally Scotch was like, stop, I'll do this line instead. And it was, you hear the ball hit the bat crack, and it was, holy shit, and we're going to bleep out the shit. And he goes, I hope that ball has the appropriate documentation and carry on, because it is out of here. And just, it kept going and going, and they were hilarious. The little things, and Rodriguez is on the mound. A quick note here: I recently looked up the word mound, and it has to be over 3 feet tall to be considered a mound. This is really more of a pile. And I loved doing that because my knowledge of sports begins and ends with sports movies. So if you want to know who the worst team is in the junior Olympic games, it would be Iceland. Mm-hmm. They're evil, according to D2, the Mighty Ducks. But I have come to appreciate the art of sports more in the last couple of years. I made a mistake once where I decided this is going to be my year where I learn about sports. And so I'm going to learn everything. So I was watching all sorts of games. And I remember talking to my friend Jason saying, hey, I watched this hockey game last night. And at one point, one of the players threw the stick into the audience. And he goes, crowd. He goes, it's not an audience. It's a crowd.
Fans.
And I was like,
Yeah.
oh.
There's no proscenium. It's amazing.
But there is a spotlight, though. And they're like, that's when this becomes a figure skating rink. Oh, okay. That sounds good. Well, do you have a sport that is just the one that you're like, I can't get behind this?
Hockey's tough just because I was a basketball guy growing up, so I never really went to the rink. I never really sat down and watched it. I think the one thing is if you're going to do a sport for the first time, like anything else, you have to do your research.
Yeah.
You know, you have to, if you're going to do boxing, you have to honestly know what an uppercut is. You have to understand, like, if someone wins the round, why did they win the round over, their fellow competitors? So you're going to have to do your research. Hockey's definitely, it's one that I rarely call. So when I call it, I feel kind of out of place. For basketball, I can do that with my eyes closed. That was something I played. That was something I coached, the ins and outs. So you sound a lot more knowledgeable than another sport. So you just have to get your research up, because if you want to sound as well in one sport, you kind of have to do it for the other one. Then the thing is, how much detail do you want to go in? Because everyone that's tuning in isn't a basketball savant. They're not going to know what a staggered screen is. So you have to explain what a staggered screen is. Well, there's a player who goes down to the post, sets a screen, then another player comes around and sets another screen. So it's kind of like going around two light poles and a dog chasing a cat, and the cat's trying to, come free and trying to get the basketball. So you have to, okay, how much detail do I want to give? Or do I just say, hey, you know what? Johnson comes off the screen, shoots it for 2. There you go. Now you kind of know what a screen is, but if you add different words to it, how much is too much, I think, is always a question.
This might shock you, but I have actually called one sporting event in my life. Yeah. The North Dakota Croquet High School Championship.
Wow.
They asked me, and I said, sure.
That's one where you could have made up all sorts of words and most people wouldn't have known.
So I spent days looking up terminology because I wanted to
Looks
do
like
it right.
he wickets the dunder.
And so here's the thing, though. Most of those kids were just doing it because they wanted to slough off the day from school, right?
Yeah.
And they all it was 5 high school teams, and they all had matching cardigans, and then with their school emblem on the cardigan. So it was kind of fun. It was over at the sports bubble, and they put me up on the second tier so I could look over and see everything. And then I realized, I don't know what the hell I'm doing. And so not only am I calling it because they were going to record it, but it's also going over the PA system here. This is the thing that I've got so much respect for people who call games, because I didn't know this going in, but half the kids' last names I had no idea how to pronounce. Mm-hmm. And so, I was talking about wheeling knocks the widget. That's a 1-point deduction. And I kept saying wheeling, and finally someone come over and there's welling. It's welling. And I'm like, but it's spelled like wheel. And they're like, welling. I said, oh, sorry.
There's a lot of names where you might go Nielsen, but it's spelled like Nelson. I know, but over on Main Avenue and 5th, they call it Nielsen. On Main Avenue and 4th, they call it the other one. So the worst thing about that, I had 4 Broughtons on the basketball court at the same time for Kinder girls basketball a couple of years. And all of a sudden, you can't say Broughton to Broughton. Broughton gives it back to Broughton. It's a give and go with Broughton. Go figure. You can't do that. So all of a sudden, now you're using their first names. So now you're going, Kendra gives it to Chloe. Chloe passes it back out to such and such, and that's where you're kind of doing it. So it makes it fun. It puts you on your toes, and then also different nationalities. When you have folks from like Four Winds, Milwaukee, who are on an Indian reservation, they have a tomahawk, forebear, or they have different names. So all of a sudden now you're starting to go, okay, I'm not just calling Miller and Anderson. So now you got to, make sure that your tongue, I have like a big long tongue. So trying to be specific always, I kind of have a stutter a little bit. And when you go through it, you're like, okay, here's how you say it, tomahawk, and especially if it's a different first name that you're not accustomed to, because you can tell when you're reading an ad, and you can tell the person who's kind of like theater, who's done it how many times and can kind of bluff their way through it. You don't want to be like, that was such and such for 3 when the play is already gone and you could hear the crowd in the background and, you're already 5 seconds behind the deal. So it is one of those deals where going back probably should have taken more, Spanish, more Latin, more different, because then you understand the root of words where you can probably guess. But I always go to every coach or AD or scorebook, or I'll pull the person who's taking stats who might be a 14-year-old girl for the boys basketball team, be like, hey, can you guys go through this really quick? Yeah, that's no problem. Then you say a name and they look at you like, where did you get this name pronunciation? And sometimes they purposely butcher a name to make sure I get it back right. Because if you say it close, they might go, yep, that sounds right. Or if you purposely butcher it, they're like, no. It's not that, it's this. So it's definitely one of those things when you're doing play-by-play, you don't think about. You honestly don't think about till you're actually in the saddle going, oh, wow, there's more to this than just going 10-5 touchdown Vikings. Like, you're not going to say that.
It really, I mean, there is so much more that goes into it. And I love when people come up with a little something that becomes their own. I'm thinking about the Harry Careys of the world, the Scott Millers of the world.
Yep.
And when they come up with this little tiny catchphrase that becomes something of their own, have you developed a catchphrase yet?
I am not. In basketball, I like to say Splash City if someone's doing really well for a three-pointer. And one time I used the get your umbrellas out because J.J. Gordon is really splashing it tonight from downtown, so it gets a little corny.
So yours is water related.
Yeah, water related, which is perfect in this neck of the woods.
Whoa, someone call the janitor. He's splashing around out here.
Splish, splash.
This
I was
team
taking
is
a bath.
drenched.
They got soaked.
There was a high school student section a couple years ago that said, let's get wet, because of trying to make three-pointers in rain. And I know you could take it to a different avenue.
Yeah,
so yeah.
But it must have been fun, right? Be like, well, I'm not going to put that on the air, but thanks, kids.
And they had umbrellas, and they actually had trench coats, so they took it to like the third degree.
Oh, I like that.
And then they started working for South Dakota Tourism.
Yeah, meth, we're on it. One of my favorite road trips I've ever taken was out to Bismarck for a show because we found a paper that was someone had been reading the daily paper and they had been covering high school sports. And so I don't know if it was Bismarck Century or which school, but they had a student who was like a star basketball player whose name was Scooter Pinks.
Mm-hmm.
Scooter Pinks. The thing I love the most is
name.
the the title of the article was Pinks Sinks Winning Basket. And I was like, oh my God, open up a store where you sell custom sinks. It should be Pink Sinks. And it's on so many levels, right? And we were trying to think of like Pinks Sinks Winning Dinks. And like how that journalist could have just so much fun working with that. Do you ever, is there a name that sticks out to you at all where you're like, this one's so much fun because I get to do some stuff with it?
There was, speaking of, yes, but what was it? Fertile woman dies in climax.
Yep.
I think was the headline. Speaking of headlines, like you're kind of. I mean, you and when I'm writing articles, or sometimes I'm like, okay, so funny story. A couple of years ago, the Bison were playing South Dakota State, and a coworker of ours, Jack Michaels, myself, Ryan Gellner, and a couple other people were in a text group, and I was at Fargo Beers and Gastropub playing a little pool with some of my friends who were coming in, and all of a sudden we start going, what would tomorrow's headline be? With the football game. And so all of a sudden we start kind of going back through the headlines, and Jack didn't mean it at all in a sexual way, but he said, Stick rises, Jack's off till next season. Because Easton Stick is playing South Dakota State, the Jackrabbits, and so you thought like Stick rises has a really big game, and then the Jacks are literally off until next season. But how it came over immediately, I was dying laughing on the floor, and my friends were like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "Read this," and they start same deal. I'm like, so I always think of a headline like Stick rises, Jack's off till next season. So there are definitely names where you can do more with. I mean, obviously, my last name, Miller, you can try to make a beer joke with, right? If you go Anderson or Johnson, more generic names, it's not going to be as fun as you get to, let's say Lance or a Brooks. There's different names, a Gindorf, an Ellefson. There's just different things that you can maybe kind of add to it. But then the question becomes, do you really want to go to a point where you're going to be on like the Jay Leno show, with the liners? Because, you had a good one, but it maybe meant something different for, it wasn't really maybe telling the story of the game.
I like stuff like that where it's, you think like hindsight's 2020, where you're like, oh yeah, we probably shouldn't have done that, but it didn't.
You have
with
to,
no
you have to
bad
apply
intention.
the 8-year-old boy test to it.
Yeah,
I used to work at a company, and there was this guy who was in charge of basically hiring, talent acquisition, I think was his title or something like that. And at a meeting, he's giving us all a rundown on what he does when is approached by a candidate. And he says, I have them go through the stiff test. I apply what I call the stiff test.
I was thinking like a Stiffmeister test from American Pie.
It was STIF. It stood for something. I couldn't tell you what it was. He's like, but I got to see if, do they pass the stiff test? And Jason Jacobson, again, raised his hand and said, I don't think you should call it that. I think you should come up with something else, because that does not pass the 8-year-old boy test.
No.
I wrote a sketch years ago about why every board, like at a marketing company, should have one young person on it, because you say things that you don't realize. So the sketch was, they've brought this young 25-year-old wonderkin onto the board, and he's been told, listen, you can go a long way in this company. You just got to keep your head down, never make the boss mad. And so it was a series of products that they were going to be introducing over the next couple months. And so their first one was, it's a brand new soda out of South Carolina, and it really packs a punch. And we've got this great donkey that we put on here. It's Donkey Punch Soda.
Oh, no.
And they're like, nope. And so they're like, why not? And he has to explain to these older people like what that is. And they're like, oh, well, we had no idea. So then the next thing was like, all right, well, we're unveiling a brand new casino, and we know that people want the highest quality when they go into a casino and then the hotel rooms. So what we've done is we've gold-plated everything in the bathroom. We're going to really feature our golden showers. And it's like, nope, we can't, nope, that is unfortunate. He goes like, all right, fine. But Simmons, I got my eye on you. And it finally gets to the point where he goes, folks down in our food department have really come up with something special. It's a candy bar that you pop into the microwave and you get it all gooey and melty. It's delicious. It's all chocolate. It's 3 kinds of chocolate. And of course, it's being made out of our Cleveland office. And when you open it, it's nice and steamy. So we're calling it the Cleveland Steamer. And he raises his hand and goes, Simmons, what? And he goes, it's a great idea.
Well, it's kind of like, so Beulah was in the AA football championship this past year, and they were playing Hillsborough Central Valley. And I remember I said, the Miners just keep on digging. And I got a couple people texting me back about that. Like, really? You just use them? Like, well, their nickname is Miners. So it's even for team names, you kind of have to be, cognizant of like, obviously Eagles soar to victory. That's probably been used how many times, but you got to just double check your work, I think, like anything else.
Yeah. Outside of the sports world, you got any passions?
Sports and
more sports.
More sports. Yeah.
Okay, what's the best sports movie that you think the one that you can watch over and over and over again?
Let's see. Cool Runnings at 3:00 in the morning.
Nice.
Yeah, because it always seems like it's on, and you want to kiss my lucky egg. And
I see pride.
Yeah,
I see
exactly.
power.
Exactly. That's a pretty good. And man, we're not the Swiss.
I'm heading to Jamaica next week at the time of this recording. And I've had a couple friends tell me, like, you need to dress up like John Candy's Irv Blitzer while you're down there.
Yes.
I said, no one's ever going to get that. And they're like, someone might. Might be worth it.
Draw a line down the middle of your head, make it look like a butt.
That would be really good. That would be funny. If you do, please make sure you put a GoPro on.
I will.
And then just record like the first half hour and just see how many people kind of give you like, so you really are going to do this? What if you ran into the actual team? Because it was based on a true story. What if you ran into like the actual team that saw the movie?
That's a good question. I mean, wouldn't that be nice? Wouldn't that be kind of fun?
That'd be a cameo appearance right there.
What happened to everyone in that movie? Like, I don't feel like we ever saw any of those Jamaican actors again, right?
Not too much. No, not much.
I used to quote all the time as a kid, not really realizing. It was like, I could watch that backside all day. Until finally someone was like, she's talking about looking at his rear end. And I go, oh, well, that's different. Sorry, everyone. I'm only in 4th grade. So Cool Runnings, that's on the list.
Cool Runnings is always good. Remember the Titans, I think, always kind of brings a tear to your eye, or We Are Marshall. Those are pretty good movies. Plus, they're
No Angels in the Outfield?
Angels in the Outfield. What's your name? Al. And you don't realize it. It stands for the American League. AL, until later in life, you're like, oh, it's Al.
Yeah, he puts the hat on right away. Just call me Al.
Al, just call me Al. Oh, American League. That's the whole reason. And so there's a good one. Let's see. Would you call Heavyweight? Would you call Heavyweight a sports movie?
No,
because they
there's
did
a
do
go-kart race. That's it.
Hey, they did do like the Olympic trials at the very
but
end.
half of the Olympic trial, like it's shave a balloon and it's work out this math equation. It's got very little as far as athletic prowess. That's one of the
It's
reasons.
like Beethoven being a sports movie because there's a food eating competition.
Is there?
Is it? I think it might be 2.
Yeah. Oh,
It's
I
the
was gonna
second
say
one.
when they go on vacation.
Yeah.
Beethoven's second.
Yeah.
What was the movie right before Heavyweights that you said?
Days of Thunder.
Nope.
No.
Oh, that's a good one.
That's a
though.
good one. Yeah,
I like Days of Thunder.
I remember the Titans. We were talking about. We Are
there's
Marshall.
another one. Nope. Another one.
A Drumline. Do you consider Drumline a sports movie? Nope. Because I'll be honest, I rocked out to that soundtrack forever.
I do not.
But also, that style of drumline is not something that you normally get up north. That is definitely more of a southern kind of type of ensemble there.
Do you feel you weren't really represented in the Drumline film series?
Well, no. I mean, they're not going to make a Drumline Welcome to Fargo. They're not going to make that kind of movie knockoff.
Well, you never know. I mean, NDSU's
possibly.
doing pretty well.
Yeah.
Film on campus.
Can't complain. Let's see, another sports movie. We talked about
Like, you're not
Days of
saying
Thunder.
Rudy?
I like Rudy, but too many people like that movie, so I kind of like to go off the beaten path. As you can tell, anything 90s is really good. Britney Spears, NSYNC, Garth Brooks back in Friends in Low Places days, that's my jam.
I remember what it was. It was Angels in the Outfield.
Oh,
we were
yeah,
talking
you
about.
can call me Al.
So one of the parts of Angels in the Outfield that really bummed me out was there's a couple of angels that are chubby that help out. And I'm like, oh, so
You
if
don't
you're
get skinny in heaven?
It's like you just die in whatever shape you're in. That's what you become as an angel. And I always thought that was a bummer. Like there's one that helped a guy slide by like pushing him, and then the angel kind of dips up, and he's like a real chunker.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, that's too bad. That sucks.
Did you see something you didn't want to see when he came up with his leotard or what? No.
I also think that we lose our genitals in heaven. So because you don't want to cause any problems,
Especially
when
in a
you're-
kid version movie, right? That had to be G. That scene probably made it PG. Actually, that scene probably went from G to PG.
Well, there was smoking in it.
Oh.
The dad smokes. He's like lighting up a cigarette when he comes to visit his son in the foster home. He's
true.
like, Dad, are we ever going to be a family again?
I
Maybe
really
when
think
the Angels win a pennant.
a reboot with like demons on the diamond or something would be pretty sweet. Where it's
Right,
actually
like-
Satan helps him.
Right.
It's members of hell.
There was
It's called Damn Yankees. It's been a musical for decades.
There was a hockey movie about that though. Like the guy is like with the Devils, and he essentially kind of has to give up part of his. But then he becomes all world, all hockey. He can't do anything wrong. Everything he touches, kind of like in the baseball movie, always goes in the goal. Anything he does always just kind of ends up working out. But he's got a demon. He's got a devil that he's going to come back to. So
It's kind of like when you make a wish to a genie, and you have to word it carefully because it might manifest itself in a way that you don't really want it to. I would love a movie where like a baseball player or whatever, hockey player makes a deal with the devil that I need to win this year. But instead of making him better, he just makes everyone on the
worse.
opposing team so horrible. Like they're hurting themselves. Like team buses are crashing and stuff. So he's like, his team is just getting moved forward in the brackets the entire time.
I like that because instead of 3 strikes you're out, you could do 3 wishes and blank, blank, blank.
There you go.
for a baseball game.
Yeah.
I'm going to be the one who says something unpopular here. Angels in the Outfield, they didn't deserve that pennant. They didn't win it on their own. They didn't.
They had help.
They had help. Just like in the movie Flubber.
But then they started
Ooh.
believing in themselves, right? Wasn't that the whole thing at the end? Was
Doesn't matter. They still cheated.
they were able to do it without angels?
They still cheated.
Well, it's baseball. It's a filthy. All sports are filthy.
Are they?
I think so.
Especially with Houston hitting on a garbage can to let the people know if a off-speed pitch is coming, apparently in 2017 when they won the World Series. So would you rather have angels help you, or would you rather have a trash can help you?
I'd rather have a trash can help me.
Really?
Yeah, because that way I don't feel like God is making a choice. And like for the Los Angeles, so like, what if this had been changed in the Utah Jazz? Like the ghost of Dizzy Gillespie comes forward and is like, I'm going to help you guys get this going on. The Jazz, we're going to do it. Did you ever see the movie Basketball?
I did, yes.
Okay, my favorite part of the movie Basketball is at the beginning where they're talking about the teams moving all over, like the Minnesota Lakers, moved to Los Angeles where there are no lakes, and they talk about this, and they go, and then the New Orleans Jazz moved to Utah where they don't allow music. That little bit right there always used to get me.
Just a little bit.
Did you ever play? You played basketball?
Yes.
Okay, so why'd you give up on it?
Because obviously you get to a point where you're not going to turn pro. I can still play now, but
at what point did you look at yourself in the mirror and be like, "You're never going to go pro"?
Pretty young.
Oh, yeah?
Pretty young. I was.
That's sad.
My 5'10" frame does not cut it on the basketball court unless I'm like Muggsy Bogues, a little bit. So no, it's just you realize, okay, I'm not the greatest player. At some point, you're not number one on your team, or if you're going to summer camps, you're not getting picked first, which is fine. My role is to play defense and out hustle everybody, and that's how I got on the court. I figured out my role, and there we go. You can tell, like anything else, kids that start playing at a very young age. Which now the funny story about it is, it sounds like you're doing it way too much. Kids that start playing at 5th grade at traveling sport, they've already had 3 maybe ACL injuries by the time they're 16. Oof. And now they are officially done with their like their knees look like a 60-year-old because they've done it so much, and because we're prioritizing athletic scholarships and making sure that you're getting to the next level and you're getting that professional career. We've kind of done opposite of what Norway, Sweden, and do, which is, hey, we don't make teams until they're 12. Like, they're going to play sports, they're going to have fun, they're going to learn about the game, but we're not going to be really competitive until they kind of get to like 12, 13 years old, and that's when we're just going to start prioritizing. And they've done pretty well now in these past Olympics when you start looking at Winter Olympics and what they've been able to do, because they're not putting that much stress on their body when they're really young.
What sport outside of the United States do you think it should be bigger in the United States?
Soccer's probably the easy one. I think for a lot of folks, cricket, it's pretty big. A lot of other places outside of the United States. And then rugby. I think rugby is one where that could be, you see a lot of club rugby that's going on, and lacrosse. Those 4 sports kind of feel, lacrosse is slowly building, but it's not to the level of what it could possibly be. But you're seeing a lot more schools do it. NDSU is a club team where, maybe one day there could be an NDSU club lacrosse, actual D1 team. Denver's got one, and they won the national championship last year.
I think we can see it in Minneapolis. Their soccer league is booming, massive. At a time when the Minnesota Twins could barely get any attendance at Target Field at the beginning of the season, they were selling out every single game with no standing room only tickets. Mm-hmm. And so I think that there's probably a good amount of people who are getting on the soccer bandwagon.
Yeah, Minnesota United, they have that Allianz Field, about 20,000 people. Target Field holds around 35,000. Also, you're not going to talk to a normal cohort about soccer too much, but if you run into a United fan, they will love you for it. They cherish it like it's their baby. It's their kid. If you talk to a United fan, they sing Wonderwall after they win, so you got to love that. They sing it with the crowd and the fans. But the Twins, Vikings, I think we're in a Vikings-heavy town because of the NFL, but it's going to be curious what everything looks like 10, 15, 20 years from now if the NFL still has this concussion issue. Are they going to be as popular? Does soccer become more of the number one sport because kids then will get older and they will grow with soccer, so I think the professional sports landscape's got some intriguing, years coming up and moving forward.
What about Ultimate Fighting?
Ultimate Fighting, there you go. I'm not a big UFC fan, number one. I've never really gotten into it. Even boxing, when it was, Muhammad Ali, I'll go watch some old videos and see him kind of, bust a rhyme, and then I actually absolutely bust a rhyme inside the rink on someone. And I've never really gotten into it just because I'm not someone that's going to watch 2 people, hit each other for 30 seconds or 6 minutes or 7 minutes. Which is ironic because you might go, well, don't you do that in football?
Or hockey.
I mean, you kind of see it already in a different degree. But UFC is big. I mean, go to Buffalo Wild Wings in town, and if there's fight night, you better get there early because otherwise you're not going to get a spot.
There's actually been talk about them taking the gloves off in UFC as a safety precaution, because you wear gloves not to protect the face of the person you're punching, but to protect your hands, because you'll break your hands in someone's head. And there's talk that actually if they took the gloves off, there would be far less punches to the head, because you're going to damage yourself when you do it.
Totally.
Versus with the gloves on, they'll just keep punching at the head, and that's where you get the worst cerebral edemas, basically.
So isn't it still up in the air about whether or not it's legal for like a sports bar to play a UFC fight, or have they figured out like
a
contract
pay-per-view?
for it? Yeah,
I'm not sure.
Have they figured out a contract for that yet?
It's. I know some places in town will buy for one particular event, but if you do, there's a pretty steep, fee that you have to pay for that one. Where other places, if they have them all season long, there's just whatever the contract states. So it's definitely one of those deals where it's one of those sports, kind of like football. There's folks that aren't into football, but they're into football during Thanksgiving. And they're into football during the Super Bowl because with family and friends, there's food, there's other stuff around it. I think UFC is the same deal, where there might be one or two times you have people watching it, but if you're not into it, you're not going to watch it. But if you're into it, where the next, for example, a coworker of ours, Josh Linus, is very into it. He's been to fights in Vegas and Minneapolis and Kansas City.
Dude goes everywhere.
Yeah, so he's one of those people where he could go any weekend and know where a fight is, and he's going to be able to tell you the time, the place, the schedule.
Oof. I see. It's hard for me to watch it.
I love it.
I think of those people who spend $100 on a pay-per-view and the fight lasts one round, a minute and a half, and it's done. Mm-hmm. You go like, oh, well, that was a fast $100.
Right. I mean, it's not going to be just that fight. That'll be the title fight at the end of the night.
There's other ones on the card,
but they're never as interesting.
No. And then the Conor McGregor stuff that's been going on, outside of the ring,
right.
kind of takes a whole. And that's the one thing about these sports is I'm always surprised when a general public kind of goes, well, why would they be doing these things? Well, they're hitting each other at a very physical sport. Like, there's going to be repercussions, either short-term or long-term, down the line about their general day-to-day health.
But it's also hard to sell a fight if there isn't that stuff.
Oh, totally.
Like, that stuff is the stuff that usually sells the fight, because you hate on one of the fighters, so you want to see that person get hurt. So all the McGregor stuff, I think, is 100% calculated to that effect, which is, even if it wasn't calculated, but here's the gravy on the other side of it, right? That helped sell his Khabib fight like bonkers. People wanted to see McGregor get his ass beat, and he did, like, handily. Khabib ruined that guy, and I just love watching two roided out dudes just put each other in the hospital, man. I like that it's more upfront than, say, the NFL, where it's like that's going on at the NFL too, but it's in a different way. Like, their players do awful stuff outside of the game as well, and still end up playing every day.
Do you remember when the Vikings had that faithful boat trip on Lake Minnetonka?
Love boat.
Yeah. I remember picking up an issue of the magazine Maxim. I don't know if you remember that little ditty. It was the Playboy for 14-year-olds. And I picked it up because they had an expose on that boat trip. And when you read it and you hear about, like, they turned off all the lights, so it was really dark, and they're playing dice in the corner, and it was, you couldn't see through the cigar smoke. And then at one point,
sounds awesome.
Two of them went up and pushed the captain out of the bridge.
Oh, that's not
and
awesome.
Took over control of the boat.
That's not cool.
It was nuts. I love that story. I mean, here's the thing. So if I am an athlete in a pro level, what do you think the lowest paid athlete for the Vikings is making a year?
It's easily six figures.
Okay.
Yep.
So let's say I'm making $500,000,
yep,
right, playing for the Vikings. I think that I could keep my crap together off the field, knowing that win or lose, I'm getting paid. And if I win, I get more money, so all the better, but I'm still walking away with that much money. So when I see people have these giant breakdowns, as far as like, I got caught drunk driving and there's a bunch of cocaine back there, and I was with, my cousin who's only 15 years old, I'm putting him in danger. I think, come on, man. I make way less money than you, and I keep things pretty clean all the time.
Yeah, and the one thing too is, especially today's day and age, I mean, I could only imagine if Randy Moss would have been growing up today with his straight cash homie stuff, because if he had Instagram, if he had Twitter, if he had Snapchat, if he had TikTok, all these, apps, I'm like, I wonder the guys like a Joe Namath who had a pretty legendary stuff off the field with some of the stories. If you read about Joe Namath because of his fur coat and the cigar, it's like, if you would have had these guys playing today, could have they done it? Because it was a completely different time. Like, unless you had a reporter from your insert newspaper following you home and back to work the next day, like, no one knew half the stuff that was going on, and just kind of got shoveled under the rug, and you never heard about it again. But now, where you can have someone like Antonio Brown, who has, during a Pittsburgh Steelers game, goes to the locker room and showing, hey, this is what the locker room's looking like. Hey, there's Big Ben. Hey, there's Mike Tomlin. The Steelers see this. They're like, what are you doing, man? Because this is private stuff. I mean, you could have certain words being spoken that you never thought would be coming out of these players' mouths. You can have certain stuff that's going on with the team itself that they don't want to let go. You could have Mike Tomlin make a speech about how they, kick the crap out of the Chiefs, and we think they're a horrible organization. If that would have gone out, that would have been even bigger. So it's funny how social media has given everyone a definitely a voice. Everything's a voice. Podcasts, for example, vlogs, everything's a lot more attainable. But if they would have played back in the 40s or 50s, doesn't Antonio Brown go down as a really great chum, and he's been awesome because everything kind of just got swept under the rug.
Sure, because you can spin it, right?
Exactly.
So I think back in the day, the PR people for the teams were the ones who came out and did most of the the legwork with the. Babe Ruth will be out here in a moment, and the Babe is really excited because he's donating all of these shoes to orphans because the Babe loves it, and they're like, "Babe, you're giving shoes to orphans?" Yep. All right, there's a story. And then he takes off and drives drunk with his mistress.
Yeah, like all people would know about you is the game that they heard on the radio.
Right.
Yeah,
That's what
exactly.
That's what.
And the article that they read in their daily paper.
Right.
One of probably the least impressive sports things that I've ever been a part of is back in the day, my dad and his partner, Dee, would take both of our families. So like my sister and I would come, and then Dee would bring his kids, pile us all into a van, and we would drive to the Twin Cities to go see a Twins game.
Yes.
And it didn't matter who the Twins are playing. Metrodome, baby. In fact, they used to do a thing, and it was with like a Michelin tires or all tires, where it was the tire race, but it was an animated piece. It was a pink tire, a blue tire, and a green tire, and they'd round, and they never update. It was always the same, right? It's like Pinky's rounding third, and it was always the same thing. And I remember that year after year being like, update your goddamn graphics. I'm 8, and I already know that this is bullshit. What are the season ticket holders getting out of this? But we're at the hotel. My favorite part was going to the hotel and getting the swim and stuff like that. And so we're like, we're going to order a pizza for dinner. And so I went down to the bar where Dee and my dad were hanging out. And I was like, Dad, can I have $20? And he's like, hold on, like I'm talking to this guy. And I'm like, can I get $20? He's like, JJ, I'd like to introduce you to John. And I'm like, oh, hey, how's it going? Can I get my $20? I'm going to go have pizza. And he's like, you're going to have some pizza, huh? And I said, yeah, I'm going to have some pizza. And he goes, all right, well, enjoy that pizza. Well, he had been sitting at the hotel bar chatting up Johnny Unitas. And I had no idea who Johnny Unitas was.
The Adventures of Pete and Pete yet, had you?
Yeah. So funny enough, years later, I'm watching The Adventures of Pete, and my dad walks in, and they're like, "Oh, they're talking about Johnny Unitas. Remember when you met him at the Holiday Inn by the airport?" And I said, "Nope, I don't. I certainly don't." But they're just little moments. I heard a great story about I had a good friend who was dating a girl who lived with a couple of Minnesota Vikings cheerleaders. And so they had been in Chicago, and they went to this nightclub, and Michael Jordan was at this nightclub, and Michael Jordan was buying drinks for everybody. And just like they said, that dude loved to be loved. Like
He was making it rain. He was getting wet.
Totally.
He's like,
let's get wet.
Who wants some Hanes money here? And they said, it's great when you get to meet one of these celebrities. They're not just athletes, but they're celebrities who meets and beats your expectations, because they owe you nothing as far as a fan, but they go above and beyond and just do a great thing. Do you know the comedian Brian Posehn? I sat next to him on a flight once, and he could not have been a bigger jerk.
Really?
Yeah. And I think he and I are seated right next to each other. We're both bigger guys, and there's empty seats in the plane, and he is arguing with what must be a girlfriend on the phone. And he's like, I'm in a bad seat. I'm sitting next to a bad guy. And I was like, excuse me, sir. I guess I was a fan. I no longer am.
Why did he not like you?
I don't know.
Did you scream with delight when he dies in The Mandalorian?
I can't believe you just threw that out there.
What do you mean you can't believe?
Well, what if someone's listening to this? Spoiler alert.
Whatever. It's first episode.
Spoiler alert. Okay.
I don't have Disney Plus, so
Been
don't
out
worry
for
about
weeks.
It's been out for weeks.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to really date this one.
We can talk about Baby Yoda. We can talk about Brian Posehn.
What?
Anyways.
So, but I was always just kind of like a little like, ugh. So I was a fan of this guy, and now I'm less of a fan because, and not that he should sit down and be like, hi, I'm Brian. Do you know me from this thing? Can I sign something for you? But I hadn't said anything to him. I didn't try and sneak a picture or anything like that.
I've had negative celebrity encounters, but they never made me like the celebrity less. It just made me kind of go, that makes sense. So when I met Steve Martin, like he couldn't have been even less interested. But I was like, yeah, you didn't, I don't think you realized there were going to be cameras here today, and you didn't really want to meet people. And so I kind of understand it. But I've had negative ones, especially with poker players, where I would be like, yeah, you're a douche.
And someone like Steve Martin, too. I mean, think how many years of his life he's had to go through where he walks to a bookstore.
Yeah.
And people are,
there's nowhere he can go.
Yeah, there's nowhere he can actually just go hide out. So it almost, I wonder for them if it becomes an actual, okay, I got to do this now if I'm going to go out in public, especially with one or two other people and just go out, and I'm not going to have like a wall that's in front of me. Kent Herbeck, former Minnesota Twins, speaking of the Twins, was at Wrigley Field 2 summers ago, and it was like 105 degrees, really hot out. I'm sitting right behind the Twins dugout, and all of a sudden I look to my right and I see a guy that's getting some bottles of water and some towels from the dugout. I'm going, what the? This never happened. So I look at my buddy Tony and I go, Tony, is that Kent Herbeck? And he looks at me and he goes, I think it is. I said, okay, well, I spotted him, so you go make the dumb if it's not Kent Herbeck, so then I don't have to. He's like, fine. So he goes, excuse me, sir, are you Kent Herbeck? And he goes, yeah. It's like, oh, can I take a photo with you? And he was fine, just took a quick photo, shook his hand, said, thanks, and, on our merry way, and same deal. What are you gonna say? No. I mean, do you want to be that guy in Tin Cup that I forget? That's who is it? That pretty much comes up and talks to Jim Nantz and goes, geez, you shot a 68 on the opening round. And he goes, yeah, well, God willing, it was awesome. I just hope to play a really good round of golf, tomorrow and try to make the cut. And then he leaves and he's got his publicist there. Then he takes a smoke quick behind the break. And then someone brings their grandson essentially like, hey, excuse me, sir, can I have you sign my little Jimmy's hat? And he goes, can't you see I'm working here? I don't come to your office and like ask for your autograph, and that's what I think of sometimes with celebrities where it's like, okay, who's actually putting on a front and trying to be the Mr. Nice Guy all the time with the PR, but then if you actually took them, 5 feet away, close the door, would they be like, God, those people out there, they just don't understand what it's like to be me. It'd be kind of an interesting dilemma to see how far up can you go before you think like you're bigger than everyone to compare to someone who's just starting out, because when you're just starting out, you want to love everyone because you want to get your name out there as much as possible.
I've seen some amazing, crowd handlers in my day. I just got a chance to chat with Louis Anderson and could not have been more giving with his time. His publicist was like, you've got 5 minutes and that's it. And then we got on the line and we're like, all right, Louis, we understand we got 5 minutes. He's like, no, you got all the time in the world. Go for it. I also, Larry the Cable Guy. Remember when he came to the Fargo Theater?
Yep.
He stayed after this show until every person who wanted a picture and wanted an autograph. I mean, he must have been in that lobby for an hour and a half.
He was already selling out stadiums at that point, and he was doing small shows too. He was a really nice guy. Although you'd also hear the accent get dropped because it's a stage accent. It's not how he actually talks.
Yeah, the level of celebrity. And people come up to me all the time for the JJ Meets World podcast, and they're saying things like, sir, your oil change is done. And I'm like, okay, no pictures.
Here's something that actually is annoying. So JJ does get recognized recognize from the radio all the time. And
I've seen it. I've been out at places with them. Hey, JJ, how are you?
It ruins Applebee's. Because we'll be having a nice meal, and then some lady at the next table decides, well, I know JJ because I listen to him every day. He doesn't know me, and I'm just going to keep injecting myself into their conversation the whole time. I don't like that. You know exactly what night I'm talking about,
The
too.
coupon lady?
Yes.
Like, yep. Yes. And I don't. So I'm at that stage where I want to make sure I please these people, like, right?
Yeah.
Because I know what a big deal it is to like meet somebody who you want to have that personal, like, one-on-one with. I love meeting celebrities. I mean, it is a real rush for me. So, like, when I brought Stephen Tobolowsky to town, it was hard for me to play it cool because the whole time I wanted to be like, in the movie Jekyll and Hyde, when you were playing, like, what does Bill Murray smell like? But so I like to give people as much face time as they would like. And they're just some people who don't know how to end a conversation. And it drives Tucker nuts. It drives my wife nuts. My sister won't even go out to places with me anymore because she's like, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, they don't read social cues. They don't.
No.
They don't read the discomfort of other people, or even of the person they're talking to. If he's like, "That's very nice," I got to get back to my meal.
And it's funny too because I feel like I do that with my friends on text sometimes. Like, hey, it's 11 o'clock at night. I'm going to bed. But did you see this latest jump shot? Did you see this latest Netflix deal? And they're like, okay, they haven't responded back. So I guess it's my cue to not text them anymore.
Well, at least after 11. I mean, come on. Social decorum.
Exactly.
Just watch this last jump shot before you go to bed.
Yes.
Two more after this.
It
one.
was really sweet. I swear to you, it was wet.
At one point, I thought, well, maybe I'll start wearing a baseball cap and people won't notice me. But I don't look good in baseball caps. Also, it's not my face that they recognize, it's my voice. So I've been testing out different voices I can use. And I had the check stand be like, can I also get a pack of stamps? And then no one's ever going to be like, that's JJ Gordon.
If you had to do a different voice, would you do the British accent the rest of your days?
No. Oh, it's because it's my British voice. This is Michael Caine voice. And then there's the proper voice. No, so I don't think I would.
No.
My problem is that every time I try and do an accent, eventually it becomes an Irish accent.
Oh, okay.
So that has caused me a lot of strife during some improv shows where I'm trying to maintain. And just the other day, I tried to maintain an Australian voice, and I can't because I got a couple key words that bring me back into it, like crikey. And so I find having to force the word crikey into a sentence just so I can reset and get back to where I need to be.
That'd be really tough on a day-to-day level if you went outside just to go buy some groceries, pick up the mail, stuff like that. If you had like a P.O. box and you're just saying crikey the entire time.
Last year when I did the Santaland Diaries at Theater B that Tucker directed, there was never a discussion, thank God, with me at least, about, well, should you be doing a David Sedaris voice? He has a very distinct voice, and I know I couldn't have followed through with that the whole way. Like, I'm glad I got to lean into my Midwestern, chubby-cheeked voice. As we wrap this thing up on that note, on chubby cheeks, one of the things I respect so much is Jason's one of the hardest workers I've ever met in my entire life because you don't like to do things like half-assed. Right. And I know that especially because every time I've gotten in your car, it is spotless. How do you maintain that?
Thanks, Mom.
That
was a trait from my mom. Oh. Yeah.
Like there's never wrappers in there. There's never even a gas receipt.
Yeah, that's one of those deals where you definitely pick up stuff, whether it's siblings or maybe it's a grandma or a grandparent or your parents. My mom's always one where it's like, if you're going to start something, you finish it, right? Or don't do it at all. So it's
what was that?
Yeah,
finish
it. So it's one of those deals where you kind of go back and forth. And no, it's like decorating a studio for Christmas. I'm gonna make sure it looks like a 4-year-old and Buddy the Elf threw up in there. As much as possible. So it's fun. And the one other thing too is if you're gonna do something, whether it's this podcast or anything else that you do, it's kind of like you might as well if you're gonna put 5 cents in or 5 minutes of your time, and you might as well try to take the entire hour than just the 5 minutes. So
that's a good way of thinking about it. More people should do that.
Well, and it definitely makes myself anal at times. I will tell you that there's times where I get too nitpicky, probably more so than what I need to, but that's just kind of how it is.
Well, I think so. I think some people just eventually say, gosh, I've worked really hard on this. and I'm not getting the results that I want, but I'm not going to give up on it because I worked really hard on this.
Right, yep.
And I've got personal value for it. So even if it's not exactly what I envisioned, I'm still proud of the time I put into it. If you are not proud of the time you put into it, you did not give it your whole self.
No.
When I do public speaking, one of the things I do in my team building speeches is I say, all right, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to bring Chase up here. Now, Chase, you don't have to do anything. Let's just pretend that Chase has finished an amazing speech. Everyone feels very inspired. And I want you to give 100% of the biggest applause you've ever given. And I'm like, all right, go. And so there's like, yeah. And some people stand up and yeah. And they give their 100%. They say, okay, Chase, stay up here. If I were to say, could you give me 20% more if I paid you $100? And they're like, oh, yeah, I definitely. I'm like, well, then you didn't give me 100% to begin with. So already I know that you're tuning it down. And if we just approach things with realistic expectations of what we're going to put into it, we're going to end up with the product that we get. If you give 10%, you're going to get a 10% product.
Exactly. And that's the one thing when you're doing play-by-play or anything, I think in any job, but in radio, you definitely can tell people who prep and the people who don't prep. You can definitely tell the folks that take their extra time to maybe make sure they're saying the right pronunciation of a name, or they're doing their homework and their work, and they got all these little stats and nuggets that, you know what, they might not even use. But if you went there and talked to them and you saw, oh my God, you had like a page worth of notes. Where did you find all this stuff? Well, I just, the other night, just interviewed the coaches and went on the interwebs and found some stuff and found a box score from here and a box score from there. It doesn't take much to, put a pretty good broadcast together. So no, it gets to be a fun time. And, obviously anytime you're getting to this, this juncture of talking about sports, it kind of makes you definitely reflect. I think that's the one thing throughout this broadcast, kind of you reflect on stuff with podcasts. And I think that's the cool thing here is you can pop on the mic anytime you want and talk about 5,000 different subjects. And there's probably one that hits home a little bit closer to the heart than other ones. And when you talk about that one particular subject, you probably go back and go, wow, did I really just say that?
Chubby cheeks.
Yeah, exactly. Chubby cheeks, let's get wet. So definitely little things that you just go, wow, okay, that really happened.
Chase, do you have a Twitter handle or anything if people want to follow you, if they're like, I really like the sound of that kid?
Yeah, at Chase Miller 740. Go figure, 740 because 740 the fan.
The fan,
yeah,
that's
so at Chase Miller 740.
You can hear Chase Miller on the fan, which I think has the widest broadcast range of any of ours.
Fifth largest daytime signal in the country for that blowtorch.
Whoa.
It's not like we use it on a line or anything, JJ.
I'm not currently listening because no one's asked me to call any games on 740.
So like operating the region's second most popular Taco Bell.
Yes.
Oh, the second most popular.
Speaking of calling games, is there anything for sports that you don't consider a sport? Like, do you like esports?
I don't think that they should be calling it esports. That's the problem with it. I think it should be like it's a competition, just like how debate is a competition.
Kind of like
right?
If you're doing Halo, it's like, okay, this is Halo 1 or this is Halo 25 tournament type of deal, right?
Yeah.
And so I don't think that it's a competitive element, but it's not a sport to me.
Okay.
Yeah, the word sport got used a lot. I used to work in poker TV, and that conversation happened all the time. Is this a sport? Is this not a sport? And then there are certain things that are now being considered mental sports, like chess, games that do, even though you're not running around, there is still some sort of physical element to it. But it seems like the word sport is being sort of divorced from athleticism, and that there are athletic sports, which is like a kind of competition. Then there's electronic sports. So we're kind of going through a point where we're just essentially redefining exactly what sport itself means. How would you define sport?
Is Pulse Tab a sport? Because if that's a sport, I'm either really good at it or I suck.
Well, it is technically a game. It's charitable gaming.
Okay, all right. Well, blackjack, I'm kind of good. Sometimes I won $60 the other night, but then I lost 40 the other night. So there we go. Yeah, so checks and balances. For me, when I was growing up, it had to be some type of basketball, a puck, a tennis ball. It had to be something that's what you define as a sport. But I think if you are going to play an actual tournament and you're going to play with a bunch of people who play chess or checkers or, insert something that's not, having a like ultimate frisbee, is that considered a sport? Well, before people would just say, oh, you're just throwing a frisbee. Well, now it's actually going into a competition where you have a team, you have a set of rules.
Point systems.
I think you have to have a set of rules, a point system, and you can kind of properly say what is a sport. Esports, to me, it's catchy, right? You can say esports. And kind of like e-cigarette. Instead of saying cigarette, you're just saying just an e-cig, so it's short, sweet, you know what everyone's talking about, and that's where the branding comes in, and that's where they've done a really good job of branding, because now you go to a place like University of Jamestown, they have an esports. They're giving scholarships away for kids to come in and learn about esports there. So I think it is, with how much money is already being involved. What did the kid make? Like over $1.5 million or something for winning one of these tournaments a couple months ago. So it's
Fortnite.
Fortnite
kid
tournament.
Took down Fortnite. Yep.
So
I watched a 17-year-old just the other day. My relatives had Twitch on win $400,000 playing StarCraft.
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, I was like, poof.
I wonder if sport as a term needs to refer to there being some kind of construction around it, right? There's maybe an organizing body. You know, it's a competition that invites an audience. There's more to it than just throwing a frisbee in your backyard with a friend, right?
Well, every 4th of July, we always hear about Nathan's famous hot dog eating competition, and that's called Major League Eating. And that's always a question, is eating a sport? Well, I don't know how Joey Chestnut devours 50 hot dogs, because I know I cannot do that in a 10-minute time span. But if you talk to those folks within Major League Eating, they will say this is competitive eating, which by there is, because there is a body of MLE, says it is a sport.
And he trains.
Yeah. I think that's the biggest deal. If you can show that you are training, there is some type of strategy, and that it's not just you show up and you play. Like, is spike ball really a sport? I mean, it has a ball. You have 2 people on one team, 2 people on the other team. The objective is to obviously spike it to where they can't get it. I don't know if that's as much of a sport, but some might say cornhole's a sport, because I see that on ESPN all the time, and there's like the cornhole championships, and someone's tossing a bag. You know,
Is competitive jigsaw puzzling a sport?
I mean, if these other things are, then it would be, I think, if it meets all those criteria. We need to have a panel of people with different opinions and have them fight it out, but they all need to have more knowledge about sports than you or I.
Did we just create a new sport?
Maybe.
I think
The
so.
sport definition sport?
The arguing sport?
I think so.
Ooh, coming down hard. Tucker Lucas is going to take a hard bash here. He's calling out the use of the Oxford comma.
JJ just got soaked.
Chase Miller, thanks for stopping by.
You betcha.
A huge thanks to Natalie Deutsch of Hatch Realty for sponsoring this podcast. Folks, if you're looking to buy or sell a home, contact Natalie Deutsch today, because Natalie Deutsch is not only a previous podcast guest, she's somebody who's going to care enough to sell your property for top dollar. She's also going to find you the best price possible if you're purchasing a new home. Last year on average, Natalie earned her clients $4,000 over list price on their homes and sold them faster than the market average. On average, Natalie's selling a home every 3.74 days. That's 2 homes a week. Those numbers don't lie. Find out why Natalie is one of the top agents in this entire market. Get a hold of her today, Natalie at hatchrealtyfm.com. You can also call 701-388-9338 or go on to livefargomoorhead.com. That's livefargomoorhead.com. Read all of her amazing reviews, and then listen to her episode of JJ Meets World. Thanks again to Natalie Deutsch of Hatch Realty. That's going to wrap it up for today's show. If you enjoyed this episode of JJ Meets World and would like to help us continue to produce 2 new episodes every week, you can donate to our Patreon. Check out patreon.com/JJ Meets World and donate today. Even as little as $1 a month can go a long way. Visit our website at www.jjmeetsworld.com or hit up our social media. We're on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all the sites the kids are using these days. If you'd like to stay up to date on new episodes of JJ Meets World, you can find us on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, YouTube, or wherever you consume the podcast that you love. JJ Meets World is produced every week by Tucker Lucas. You can find out more about Tucker's work by checking out www.moonbasemaria.com. If you want to get in touch with your host with the most, go to linebenders.com, and you can find direct contact info for JJ. I think Chase must get his hair cut at the same place he's been getting it cut for years. I imagine him as a 26-year-old sitting on a panda, working on a sucker, and watching a cartoon while he's getting his haircut.